Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lancaster County Planning Commission of February 5th, 2025. A printed agenda is available outside of the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, are available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. Out of courtesy to those attending the meeting, commissioners, and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. Please note, Planning Commission action today is final on the following items. Item 4.1, Special Permit 632B. Item 4.2, Special Permit 24043. And Item 4.3, Special Permit 25001. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or the County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held January 8th, 2025. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second, Edens.
Ball. Cruz.
Yes.
Ebert.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
We will now proceed with today's agenda. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All remaining items on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Yes, item 1.1, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 24020 to amend the Holly Hamlet Property Conservation Easement and to modify the easement with located on Outlot A associated with garden plots and staging areas generally located at 632 North 25th Street, 605, 631, 633, 643, and 647 North 26th Street, and 2533 U Street. Item 1.2, Use Permit 17007A, which is an amendment to the existing permit to establish a preliminary site layout for the expansion of the campus and future development and increase the height on property generally located at Northwest 1st Street and West Harvest Drive. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
Nope.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items, please stand and state the item.
We do not see anyone here that would like to speak on the consent agenda item, so we would now entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda items.
Second, Edens.
Ball.
Yes.
Cruz.
Yes.
Ebert.
Abstain.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Consent agenda approved.
We will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and or included as a part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided. The clerk will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. The red light indicates that your 5 minutes has expired, and once the final minute has lapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Item 4.1, special permit 632B to amend the CUP to add 26 additional townhome lots on property generally located at Old Cheney Road and Abbott Road, and this is final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of the site to be disclosed?
No.
Good afternoon, Ben Callahan with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. The picture up here. So this is an amendment to the existing special permit for the Abbott Estates Community Unit Plan. So it's located on the south side of Old Cheney, just east of South 41st Street. So it's roughly a little over 9.5 acres. The original CUP was approved back in, I think, 1972 and has an existing 36 townhomes along Abbott Road. The developer, so the developer is proposing basically an infill of the existing outlot that is in the CUP. So they would be proposing an additional 26 townhome units and making a connection on, there's an existing driveway here, private road that accesses the back garage doors for the existing townhomes. So they would be improving that, then creating the new private roadway for Holstrom Court to place the townhomes on. With that, they did request a few waivers, and a lot of them are regarding the lot size and width, which are compatible when setting up in a townhome manner for smaller building footprints and setbacks. I know Mike Eckert is here today, so he'll talk a little bit on the detention, but 2 detention ponds will be added, working with watershed management, which is hopefully an improvement on the property as well, as those are not existing today. Currently, the property is surrounded by, everything's built, so we would consider that an infill project, but single family R3 along the west side, R1 to the north, and then kind of a mix. There's a senior living facility to the east, and then a St. Peter's Catholic Church on the southeast of the site. Overall, working with the applicant, we did find this is or compatible with the comprehensive plan for infill, adding additional dwelling units. It's still following under the allowed density for the CUP, would allow up to a maximum of 66 units within the boundary. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Not at this time.
All right.
Thanks. All right, we'll now have testimony from the applicant.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Mike Eckert with Civil Design Group, here today on behalf of Tuscany Townhomes, the townhome developer, a local townhome developer that's taken on this project. Yes, it was an outlot owned by the Homeowners Association of the existing townhomes, and they desired, for financial reasons, to be able to sell it and do some redevelopment. So, been about a year, worked with the planning department on this. As you saw, there were several waivers primarily designed to help us get a new road back there for these lots. It would meet city standards, as well as then detention and how we were going to do the detention. So we had a very good neighborhood meeting, very cordial. I think people were open to this, and we talked that it's always difficult to have green space behind your home turn into more homes, but I think the key element here is that we are staying within the R3 CUP density. It doesn't require a change of zone. There's that many units left. We still have 4 unused units, which we really don't have a place for now because As Ben mentioned, this was several decades ago before the stormwater detention requirements were in place. And so that area that he showed behind the townhomes adjacent to our single-family neighbors is where we're going to be doing 2 different detention cells. And that was a lot of our discussion we had at the neighborhood meeting, was how would that work? And so, you know, we actually are controlling the peak discharge and reducing it by about 50% and slowly reducing that over time. But there are 2 different existing storm sewer pipes that go through the lots adjacent to us, and luckily all 3 of those homeowners were at the meeting, and we were able to explain how that's going to work, that we're going to detain the water and then we're going to tie a pipe into their pipe so it no longer overland flows and occasionally would overtop onto their property. So with that, I appreciate staff's work on this unique project. It is a one of the large comprehensive plan goals of infill units we're trying to get done, where we'll be adding about $1 million worth of accessible real estate with very little cost to the city. We'll be using the existing Abbott Road and Old Cheney Road and extending a sewer main and water main, and hope to get these started this year. So be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Okay, thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will start with testimony in support of this application. Is there anyone here who wishes to testify in a neutral capacity, or anyone who is here to testify in opposition to this application? All right, any additional questions for staff? Or any questions? Okay.
Ready for the motion? I move to approve the special permit 632. Oh, I move to close the public hearing.
Second, Edens.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell, or Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
Perfect. And now I'll move to approve special permit 632B.
Second, Edens.
All right, discussion?
I think that they've done a good job of meeting with the association and the neighbors and working out all the details with staff and the people involved, and I will support this.
Additional discussion? And I would just like to just add in the record again, which we frequently reiterate at these meetings, that when people do send in public comments, we do receive those and review them. And so we appreciate people taking the time to provide us feedback in our consideration. I will also be supporting this. This is in my neck of the woods, and appreciate the opportunity for some infill. So I will also be voting in support. Any other discussion? All right, Shelley.
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved. Okay, next is item 4.2, special permit 24043 for personal wireless facilities to allow a 189-foot tall self-support tower on property generally located northwest of Northwest 98th Street and West Agnew Road. This is final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of the site to be disclosed?
No.
Ben Callahan with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. This special permit is to allow a personal wireless facility out here. And this is in the very northwest corner of Lancaster County, roughly about a mile south of the North County line, and located on roughly 150-acre property that's zoned AG today. The property is completely surrounded by similar use for AG, majority of farmland. And the applicant, on behalf of Verizon Wireless, is applying for the special permit to allow a 189-foot cellular tower. Special permits required with the use, and with AG, the height limit is 35 feet. So that's what's allowing the increase in height would be the permit. Submitted on the site plan, so this shows kind of the proximity here, but this would be south on Agnew Road. So it's roughly a quarter mile north of the intersection, and will be around 300 feet then internally on the lot to the west. So they did propose, I believe it's roughly a little over 14,000 square feet of area that would be used on the property, with the driveway coming in off Northwest 98th, and then everything would be fenced as we require for access for the tower and the generator on site. I do want to note that one of the conditions that we list in our special permit is distance to other towers in the near location. And there is one located to the southeast on Agnew Road. Within the permit, we do request over a half mile in distance, and that would be meeting this requirement with the set area they've shown. Beyond that, I guess I can answer any questions.
This pretty consistent height with other wireless towers?
Yeah, it's consistent with what's in the county for sure, and I believe the one to the southeast is, I think, 210 feet, so it'll be slightly a little shorter than that one.
Okay.
Additional questions? So, you'll have a chance to, we'll ask for people to testify either in support or opposition, and at that point, you can state what those questions may be, and then we can then ask them when we get to staff questions. All right, thank you. Testimony from the applicant. Nope,
the
first we're
applicant.
doing the applicant. Here we go.
Afternoon, staff. My name is Andy Campen. I'm with KGI Wireless. We're a consultant for Verizon Wireless and assist Verizon in locating and constructing towers of this nature. So I'm just here in support and also to answer any questions that you might have.
Why this location? What causes you to choose this spot?
Yeah, this is an important site to the network for the radio frequency team at Verizon. And how it interplays with other sites that, densify the network as far as capacity and coverage for, everybody in that part of the county.
Oh. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll have any testimony in support of this application.
Hi, my name is Emily Malewski, and I'm with Verizon. I'm here today to answer any questions, and we are looking forward to providing better service to the area and making sure people have access to technology in Lancaster County.
All right. Is there anyone else here who wishes to testify in support of this application? Anyone who would like to testify in a neutral capacity? And now testimony in opposition.
Yeah, my name's Anthony Commenda, and I live on the corner of Northwest 98th and Agnew Road. And so just is exactly where this thing's going to be. Is it going to be right across the road from me or what? I didn't quite understand that.
It will be on that parcel. When the staff comes up, they can, and with the applicant, we can show you on a map if they have a
Can you show me
specific.
where it's going to be?
Yeah.
So I live right here.
Yeah, here I'll show on. Roughly, it's about a quarter mile north.
Over
Quarter
here?
mile, nope, it'll be just off of West 98th.
Oh, it's gonna be on West 98th, right,
So,
right on the top of that hill?
correct, yeah, it'd be, so a quarter mile north of the Agnew and West 98th intersection.
Well, I was just wondering why it's not marked on the maps. Well, anyway, I was here for the very first one. What was that, around 20 years ago? Something like that.
Okay.
And I asked if somebody could dig up the records, at that time, they guaranteed me there would never be no lights on it. Now it's lit up like a Christmas tree, and they're blinking and stuff. So is this one gonna have lights on it too?
No.
I mean, so what,
With that height, wouldn't that?
Well, I don't know.
We'll
We
ask.
will ask. We'll get clarification. I'll make a list and we'll just ask them all at one time. So there, I mean,
So since I was guaranteed, why wasn't, so what's the guarantee for? And then it was just, all of a sudden, there's damn lights all over it, so.
okay, we will ask the staff and the applicant to answer that question for you.
Yeah, and, the last meeting you had, that was for those people to get a zoning permit allowed. Is that right? The last meeting? They were,
The last meeting on this particular application or other?
no,
yeah.
at the closest tower to me, just east of, on the hill, for them to extend their tower.
Oh, okay. We did have a meeting, but yeah.
Yeah, and that meeting was for those people to get the permit, so then they could go ahead and build the tower. Is that right?
I'm sorry. I don't have access to all of the meeting minutes in front of me to clarify that, but we can ask staff about that. And hold on just a second.
I mean,
I think that
that's-
somebody's coming up from the attorney's
That's why
office.
we had that special meeting, for them to,
Here, hold on.
Oh, sir, Andrew Barnes with the County Attorney's Office. So 2 things for this public hearing. It's not a back and forth question with the board. The second thing is that last year, I remember the hearing last year, that was a permit to add 10 feet to that already existing
to add,
tower.
ready to, for them to get the permit to add existing 10 feet at that time. They did
This
not
is-
have the permit at that time. Is that right?
Well, what I remember is that they added on that 10 feet prematurely, and that was noted. This is a separate tower.
I realize that. This is a separate tower.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but we're talking about 2 separate instances and 2 separate.
But at that
purposes.
time, when we came back here, those people came forward to accept their permit to go ahead and extend that tower.
Yes.
That was what the permit was for, right?
Yes.
Well, at that time, I lived right across. I watched about a month before this hearing was set. I watched those guys get a big boom truck in there with a 300-foot boom on it, and a whole bunch of people there, and start. This is 2 or 3 or maybe 4 weeks before this permit was even allowed. And what I was telling some gentleman that was sitting right over there, he told me, he says, we can't do nothing about it. I said, well, it sounds to me like, how could they? The tower is already done. They already erected it. And it was ready up another 12 and a half or 14 feet, whatever it was supposed to be. That's what they were here getting the permit for. And 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to that, they already had the damn thing erected.
Sir, that's your 5 minutes is up.
And, yeah, that's what they told me last time. My 5 minutes is up. They said, get off the board. But I'm telling everybody on this panel, how could they be they probably spent millions there
Sir?
to erect it and and they did a job before they even got the permit. I'd like to know how that works. And everybody says, you're done talking. That's it. That's all we want to hear from you.
Sorry, yeah, your 5 minutes
Everybody
is
gets
up.
5 minutes.
How does that work? To me, it looks like somebody was little money under the table there.
All right.
Anyway, so there was no guarantee on no lights, nothing like that, so I got.
All right. Thank you.
I mean, that's tough. They didn't even notify me. Now we're gonna put lights on this little twinkle tower there, you know, so.
Yeah,
All
can
right.
you,
Thank you.
Are you understanding what I'm here for? Because I don't.
Yeah, but sir,
Something was not
you've
handled
had 5
correctly
minutes,
on the
and
panel.
now we need to ask you to be seated. Thank you.
Yeah, and they really shut me up. They wanted me to off through fast.
we just have some other testifiers, so we need to have you have a seat.
Steve Hendrickson with the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. Just so we can have clarity in the hearing today, this is a special permit about this large property to the west of Northwest 98th and to the north of West Agnew Road. I tried to put a little X. The property for the special permit is very large, but where the tower is a quarter mile to the north and 300 feet west, so it's about the X. The previous tower that was before the Planning Commission is over here. So any testimony about the previous tower that was already erected, they came forward to add additional height to it, really isn't relevant to this application. So any information about this other tower really isn't pertinent. That's a separate application, a special permit. It's not before the Planning Commission today to review this tower over here that is already built and is already approved, went through the county board. This is about this tower up to the north. This new tower, which is not there today, is not constructed. This application is about that one. Just want to make sure that was clear. Yes?
Understood. Quick question, same applicant? Remember the hearing, but don't remember.
I don't believe so, but it really wouldn't be even
I don't think so,
relevant
it's
in
not.
terms of the application. Each application stands on its own.
Yep, thank you. All right, at this time, we'll continue with testimony in opposition.
My name is Donald Olson, 318 County Road, Valparaiso, Nebraska. I'm here to oppose special permit 24043. Who's going to take care of making a road to this? Because that Northwest 98th Street, it's a dirt road. Who's going to worry about our radio waves that come through and messes up our TVs? And are they going to leave this tower at 189 feet tall? Will they add on to it later or add more towers in the area? That's the only thing I got to ask about. Anybody can answer my questions, please?
All right, we will ask the staff and the applicant to be able to answer those in just a minute.
And I'll get it in the mail or what?
No, they're going to come up and we'll ask those questions for you.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, any additional testimony? Nope, sorry, sir.
I forgot to mention the main
No,
thing
you need
I
to
came
sit
up here
down,
for.
please.
This is the main thing I came up here for, is my television,
Just sit down.
everything went to hell. I can't even get channel 10 sometimes or channel 12, and I'm 20 miles from O Street, and which is ridiculous.
All right,
Okay, we'll check with staff on that.
thank you. All right. One more time, is there any additional testimony in opposition to this application? All right, at this time, we will have questions for staff. What can you tell us about any conversations with the county about the condition of the road? Or that will be one question. Another question is about whether or not this will have lights for air traffic safety. And then I think those are the first two questions. Need
Yeah,
some clarification on. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so I would note with the application review, the county engineer was included. So they did provide some conditions that are with the conditions of approval today. And then I know they were in contact with the applicant on just the general, with any project in the county, the upkeep, if there's any damage to the road, they would have to work with them to repair it, but there wouldn't be any type of improvement in preparation for this project. And I'd also note the public coming and going after this is built is going to be very minimal for any kind of daily traffic to the tower. And then for the question on lights, so the city doesn't put any prohibition on towers to be to have lights, and part of that would go into the FAA requirements. So above certain height limits, they'd be working with the FAA on what is required to have lights for safety.
Right, are there additional,
Did you have any conversations about other Verizon towers? Not the other vendors' towers, but Verizon towers that they would have?
I've not talked to the applicant on where the other ones
Okay,
are.
thank you.
all right, any other additional questions? All right, thank you. All right, at this time, we would invite the applicant up for rebuttal and any other additional information in response to the testimony.
Yeah, so just in response to some of the concern, so we will be upgrading the road, 98th Street. It's on the construction drawings and plans that were part of the application. So it's going to be planned to be gravelled. It's dirt now, but it will need some reinforcement for the construction that will take place and just for, maintenance in the future. So that is part of the plan. As far as lighting goes, so FAA, anything that's over 200 feet and above requires lighting. We also submit to FAA any plan for them to come back, and they determine that there's no further determination needed. So we are at 189. It's a 180-foot tower, but it's actually 189 with the lightning rod that will extend above. So it does not need to be lit, and there's no plans for it to be lit. The tower itself is designed for Verizon, but it's also designed for additional carriers, whether that's emergency services that need to co-locate that county may need, or other carriers that may want to go on this site. So it's designed for that. It's a self-support tower, which are sturdy towers structurally for additional carrier use. So I think that were the main concerns.
There's also a question about, do cell phone towers interfere with other transmissions?
No, not that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're required to go through all of the government FCC approval process, which is they tightly regulate that stuff, and Verizon has to honor that.
Okay.
I'm going to take a moment to go a little crazy.
Okay.
On when Channel 10 and 8 and the different stations changed formats to a digital format, and because I am one of the rural representatives and live out in the country also, we had to change our antenna and different things so that we could get the TV reception and stuff. We haven't dealt with any issues where I am. Is there any insight that you could provide from your experience?
I have not heard anything where cellular would have any kind of interference with television.
Perfect, thank you.
I mean, there was a move to digital and cellular as well,
Mm-hmm.
but that would just apply to older phone units and things like that. But as far as it relating to television, no.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Close the public hearing.
I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second, Edens?
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Veit,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And I would make a motion to approve special permit 24043.
Second, Edens?
All right, discussion.
I thought for sure there was somewhere in here it was over 200 feet, but now I see 189. So, just clarifying my own brain. There you go. But I do support this. I think it's I like that it's not on the edge of this lot as much. It's more, it's set back farther. I'm glad they're providing some road improvements. I think that's always a good call.
Any additional discussion?
I agree with my fellow commissioner on the road improvements, and it feels like this has been vetted. And it's nice to have our county covered so that people have access to cellular and any type of emergency contacts.
Yeah, I will just echo my appreciation for the continued expansion of our cell network, having just driven some back roads in a neighboring state over the weekend where we had absolutely no signal, and it is a little disconcerting when you're in those conditions now to get used to having access to information and if there should be an accident or anything. So I will also be in support. Any other testimony? All right, Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 7-0. Okay, we'll now move to item 4.3, special permit 25001 for an outdoor recreational facility to allow for the Battle Run 18-hole golf course and associated uses such as clubhouse, restaurant, lodging, and including the sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises on property generally located between South 98th Street and South 112th Street between O and A Streets. This is final action. I will note that Planning Commission members did receive a staff memo dated today, February 5th, 2025, to modify conditions that were previously in the staff report for special permit 25001. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
No.
Good afternoon, George Wesselhoff, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. So yes, this is a special permit for an outdoor recreational facility to allow a golf course and related accessory uses and also the sale of alcohol on the premises. Where we're at, we're between O Street and A Street with South 112th Street on the east side. The property or special permit boundary encompasses approximately 290 acres. This will be as mentioned, an 18-hole golf course that will include accessory uses open to membership. Prior to opening to membership, the owner may operate as a personal use golf course. So an outdoor recreational facility, which includes golf courses, may be allowed by special permit in various districts, including the AG Agricultural District. As part of those criteria, they have to include a statement describing the uses associated with that, which they did. It will include, the golf course will include a maintenance building, a beverage station, a restroom, a pump house, and as potential future improvement, the site plan also shows a clubhouse area with lodging facilities for golf course members. So this is the site plan. Overall, again, it's 290 acres, so a fairly large area. The clubhouse area in particular will be located.
Excuse me, could you reduce the zoom? It's zoomed in so much that we're only seeing the top half of the page. That's okay. Just thank you. That's helpful. It's hard because we want to be able to see the detail, but at that zoom, we were just seeing part of the page. Thank you.
Sure. So again, the clubhouse area is in the southeast part of the special permit boundary at near the intersection of South 112th and A Street. The setbacks are not being proposed to be adjusted with the special permit, so the required setbacks for the AG Agricultural District are 50-foot front yard, 60-foot side yard, and 100-foot rear yard. They're also not proposing to modify the height. The height limitation is 35 feet for the AG Agricultural District. There is a parking requirement still for golf courses because it's a special provision as opposed to a general AG use, and that requirement is 2 spaces per hole on the course plus parking for affiliated uses. And so as a condition of approval, they will need to add a note that parking information will be provided and verified prior to opening to membership. They did not provide any lighting information, but any lighting for this site would be subject to the lighting design standards because it's in the Lincoln 3-mile jurisdiction, so they would have to adhere to the same standards as a use or business within the city limits. And another criteria is the outdoor recreational facility can have on-site beverages, alcoholic beverages. That's part of this special permit. There's not a spatial separation like there is with the B2 or B5 districts. There's a 100-foot spatial separation from exterior door to the to a residential district or other uses for that, but they would adhere, if the property were zone B2 or B5, they would meet those setback spacing distances. Obviously, it's a large site, 290 acres, and they would not be in proximity of any residential district or the other uses that are normally associated with alcohol spacing. I would note that this permit is only for or this application is only for a special permit. They're not proposing annexation. They're not proposing a final plat or change of zone. And so in the conditions, you'll see some references to right-of-way. That is for future right-of-way of streets, such as 112th and A Street. There's no dedication that is required as part of this special permit. It cannot be required because they're not proposing any other application other than the special permit. Finally, I would just mention, as Shelley noted, there was a memo that went out this morning. Staff and the developer discussed some clarifications, and there were two changes to the conditions of approval. One was to remove the requirement or condition that the access off O Street for the pump house, which is here, that be relocated to 98th Street, which that's unnecessary because they can access from the south. And so they are fine with just removing, showing that there's an existing farm access there which can remain. That's not an issue. And then the other adjustment was specific to the side setback for the residential lots which are associated with the developer themselves. And that pertains to the tee boxes and the greens. That's an additional condition that was placed in the information, but that will not affect them. They're open to allowing those elements of the golf course to be within the 60-foot side yard. So with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
All right. Questions?
I'll do one.
Go ahead.
What kind of, these are some questions that came to us from the community. So what kind of water usage study has there been? I think there's concern about them saying that they can use a water well to irrigate 290 acres and then also provide drinking water for their guests, et cetera. So what work has been done with that?
Yes, that's a good question. Health Department could not be here today, but I did discuss this with them after they reviewed. Health Department did not identify any concerns specific to the water. There's not a specific requirement under this special permit for a groundwater study like there is for a residential CUP, for example. However, the Health Department did note as a general recommendation from the Lower Platte South NRD that they would advise that an aquifer test is the best approach for determining impacts to surrounding wells. Essentially, a test well is drilled within the proposed project or development and then pumped at a specific output. Measurements are then obtained from the surrounding water wells to determine impacts. So that's just a general bit of advice from the NRD. It wasn't something specifically identified for this project because there wasn't a concern identified from the Health Department.
You want to go to your other questions?
I don't want to take up the whole time, but
Well, no, just
sure.
you start,
for it.
and then
Keep
those
going.
that we can, we'll just cross off the ones on our list.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep going, Bailey.
Keep going.
For those listening or audience that may not know where to find these standards, you mentioned about light pollution and how they're in the 3 Mile Lincoln jurisdiction. What are those standards? Can you let folks know what those light standards are?
Yeah, you can find any design standard on our planning department website. If you go to planning department, and then once you're there, go to the development review subsection, and then design standards, and you can bring those up. You know, light trespass at the property line is one key requirement that they have to maintain, and that would protect from light pollution going beyond their golf course area.
Okay, great. So there was concern about the entrance to their future clubhouse being off of a unpaved road. Was there any concern from the engineers regarding traffic on an unpaved 112th Street?
Yes, so another good question. The golf course will first start out as a personal use golf course, but then even when it converts to a private membership, and the applicant can speak further to this, but the understanding is that that membership structure would be under the Dormy network, which would have a low number of members, tee times 15 minutes apart, and fewer rounds played per day. So in other words, it was anticipated that even when the clubhouse is opened and it's fully functional, that it wouldn't meet access management policy threshold for traffic volumes, which is traffic volumes exceeding 100 vehicle trips during the highest peak hour. So it wouldn't trigger access management for improvements.
Okay. And I think I just have one more question. It's a special permit, so is there an expiration date for a special permit? Do they have to come back?
No, it would run with the land
Okay.
regardless of ownership. Now, if they would propose something substantially different, they might have to submit an amendment, but otherwise, no.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Additional questions?
I just want to clarify on that water. You stated it was suggested, but it was not required of this applicant.
Correct. It's not a condition, it's not in the requirements, but as a general recommendation from the NRD, that is what they note.
And the 100 vehicles per hour at highest usage is also the threshold. So, I mean, if there's a special event or a tournament, everybody shows up at the same time, right? Or there's a dinner or whatever. But it's 100?
Right. The frequency would be, of the usage here would be so dispersed that it wouldn't trigger or get to that level.
All right. Additional questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This time we'll have testimony from the applicant.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Bright Olson, 601 P Street, Lincoln. Here on behalf of the applicant and ownership. I think George did a really good job of kind of summarizing a lot of the discussion and kind of background related to the project. And we can kind of zoom in a little bit differently on the site plan here to answer any questions. So I'll spend some time to also answer some of the questions that came up that may help with your guys' kind of review of the project submittal here. As I mentioned, George did a good job of kind of describing how we had applied for this under the special permit for a golf course outdoor recreational facility. I probably would like to emphasize just a little bit on kind of the two phases of this. The first and foremost phase is the personal use golf course. We estimate it's probably going to be about a 2-year window for just kind of the grading, the irrigation, the seating establishment for the course, just to kind of get from its current condition to where it's at today, or to where they could be playing golf on it. The two residences that are immediately to the southwest of this Lot 4 where the golf course is being proposed, those would be owners, and then owners' guests would be able to have the use of that golf course as it becomes available and it's ready to be played on and all those things. So the next phase of development at some point in time, and it still is, not 100% certain exactly the form and function of what all it looks like, but as we submitted it, anticipated a clubhouse. There is a driving range area kind of shown on that side of the layout as well. The clubhouse potentially, for some of that limited membership that we're talking about, also potentially has overnight lodging facilities for those members. There's been some discussion related to our inclusion of the alcohol sales, and I think some perception maybe that we have a restaurant here, that we have a bar here that's open to public use. That's not the case. That's not the intention of what that clubhouse is at this point. That's certainly not exactly sure what the clubhouse develops into specifically, but as it's being envisioned today, it's not a restaurant or a bar that's open to the public that would be utilizing this access point. So I just did want to clarify that for everybody here, and happy to answer any questions related to that if necessary. We have had a lot of conversation with planning, both when we first brought the project up to planning. We kind of worked through different scenarios about what is appropriate for the application here. I think in the end, obviously what we've come up with is what's in front of you now with the special permit. Talking with planning, it was actually a recommendation that they had to also go for the alcohol sales, just because when they do potentially host those events that may have a need for alcohol sales to be consumed on premises, rather than the ownership having to get an individual permit for that particular event, it just made sense to have the alcohol sales to be allowed for this use as it is. So I think that was helpful discussion with planning department related to that. And so I'm happy to answer any questions related to the site plan. I might start with a couple of the questions that I heard, maybe specifically starting off with the water. So Olson did prepare what we would call a preliminary water study on behalf of the owner. Completed that around the fall of last year. It's just kind of an analysis of a lot of the existing uses of the existing groundwater wells around that area, and to kind of summarize what might be potential for those irrigation wells in that area. We've been meeting with NRD as of last week. On Friday, we met with the NRD to understand what our permitting requirements would be for those irrigation wells. And so I think we had a positive meeting there with the NRD. They've kind of given us the direction that we can proceed with getting test holes drilled at the site. And as part of our permit application for those irrigation wells, they would require the test holes just to confirm the capacity of that aquifer to produce the water that we need, as well as samples of the water itself to, kind of establish a baseline for minerals, contaminants, whatever it may be. But also part of that permit requirement is that we perform a 20-year feasibility study of the use of that particular well that we're proposing for that permit and how that may impact the adjacent wells to that area. So for the purposes of specifically to the wells, we are following what are the expectations, I think, of the NRD, as well as the NDE had also indicated that we would be complying with those. I know I'm running up on time here already, but as far as, what else did I want to talk about? Oh, just related to some of the discussions related to the site setbacks. Over the past couple days, with the conditions of approval coming out, there was some concern with some of the proximity of the T's and greens within the setbacks. So we have an updated site plan kind of responding to that. We've met with ownership, we've met with the golf course designer, we've adjusted T and green locations to make sure we were out of that setback, as well as pulling the parking lot away from that setback as well along the 112th Street homeowners. So that's kind of the additional separate site plan that I got up here. We could take a look at that if we need to, and I'll stop my time now and offer up any questions.
Do you want to talk a little bit, because I think there are probably people here or people who are listening that, because we did get some feedback about lighting on the course?
I really don't expect a lighting impact. Again, the course itself, I don't think is going to be lit in any way whatsoever. The clubhouse, if and when that would ever be built, could have lighting, and I think the city of Lincoln's building codes are pretty robust in terms of the lighting standards, and so we would be contingent upon those requirements at that time. And so other than building lighting, I don't anticipate that there's any, we haven't proposed or envisioned any specific lighting that should be impactful to the adjacent neighbors.
Yeah.
I know the clubhouse is down the road.
Yep.
But do you foresee this hours of operation being daylight hours?
I'd say certainly for the golf portion of it, if there is overnight lodging or members that are staying overnight, you know, they would still, you know, be there and kind of doing whatever they may be doing. But yeah, not you know, the heavy use of it is certainly during the daytime hours, especially for events or whatever it may be.
Additional questions?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead. And did you meet with neighbors through this whole planning?
We did not hold a neighborhood meeting, but since the time of the application being submitted, I have talked to several of the neighbors, either by phone or by email. There's been just several comments that, you know, nothing that particularly, you know, there was traffic access and what might that look like next to my property and those types of questions. I think generally most of the neighborhoods have either been neutral or maybe slightly positive, but yeah, just responding to the questions that I've gotten so far on it.
Okay. Yep.
And this might not be a question you can answer, but I'll ask it since it was asked of us from a community member. There are existing mature tree, you know, lines around some of these properties. So when the holes are created and when you formulate all of this, do you foresee those mature tree lines staying put?
I do. In fact, I've got an aerial, and maybe it's helpful, maybe it's might be a little difficult to see, but I think it might also help.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we have a Zoom issue.
You're gonna, yeah, we're,
But
we can't see like the bottom. Yeah, it's really zoomed today. I don't know why it's only doing the
Perfect.
aspect ratio and not zooming
Yeah.
today, but okay.
It's okay.
All right, this is helpful.
Okay.
All right.
And I don't know how well the colors are showing through, but anywhere that you are seeing the pink lines is kind of where that grading has taken place.
Okay.
And it really is respecting a lot of those existing tree areas, kind of gives character to the edges of those holes.
Okay.
A lot of area in between all these holes is kind of remaining untouched.
Okay.
They're really, you know, kind of seeking to minimize the amount of grading that they need to do. And then,
So you said, I'm sorry, pink is the grading?
yeah, pink would be
So,
the grading.
where, in the middle of the, I don't think people are asking about the trees in the middle of the thing. I think they're
Right.
talking about, like, where maybe, say, 3 and 18 are, and around those are the adjoining property owners. So is the grading gonna, it looks like it could take out some of those trees.
I might zoom in a touch. I did see the comment about the grading, or the tree lawn along this street here. And I think, I didn't have a chance to review that with the course architect before I saw that comment, or after I'd seen that comment. But I think that's certainly, just to give some context to that. I mean, the only grading for that hole along that stretch is just that little piece there. And I think that is certainly an opportunity to be able to keep those trees along that area there. Within the corner over here, I'd have to look, even on this, it doesn't show up well about how much existing trees there may be right on the corner. It doesn't seem like there's many at all. And then up here further, I think all of that is still remaining.
Okay.
And I think my final question is, this is, I believe, right up against Hillcrest which is also a golf course. So I guess why right next to an existing golf course?
That's the property they owned. I mean, you know, yeah, sure, the proximity is, you know, proximity, but I think there's definitely a different just ownership structure. If and when this becomes like a private membership golf course, it's still different from the country club ownership pool that Hillcrest has. And so I think the owners really love the property that they have, and they love golf, and they wanted to be able to capitalize on that and develop on the area that they had.
Additional questions at this time? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will take any testimony in support of this application. Is there anyone here who wishes to testify in a neutral capacity?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is David Kirby. I live at 1121 South 112th Street in the neighborhood, as do some of my neighbors back here with us. I've lived there since 1998. So we have a little lane. I don't think Aaron did it justice on how this golf course is going to affect just the placement of the clubhouse and potentially the well. I know a couple of you live on acreages, and there's the picture that he showed is a really old picture, and it doesn't show Mark Kaufman's house right across the lane from the clubhouse. So there's a couple of things. I'd like to back up for a second and say, we knew nothing about this until the yellow zoning action sign was on the telephone pole. So there was, I know you asked when it came to the tower, the cellular tower, that there had been communication with neighbors, and I think you asked that also. There was no communication. We haven't heard anything, so since this is a final action, which is kind of surprising, because there was no communication, we didn't know anything about this, and so I'm just respectfully asking that you tap the brakes and not necessarily make an approval today, but just listen to the testimony, consider everything, consider the letters. I believe you all have a letter from Renee and Carl Eastman. I was going to read parts of it, but I don't think I will. I do have some things I'd like to point out, though, that are really critical to us. We do not have access to city water. We all have our own wells. So if between Hillcrest, which by the way still uses wells, they have city access to the clubhouse, city water to the club, but not to the golf course. They use wells. There's 3 wells there. There's Waterford Estates that pumps water. We all have our own wells. And so what happens to us when the wells go dry? We're concerned about the placement of the clubhouse. So there's 290 acres, which is like a third bigger than what Hillcrest is. So out of all that land, they want to stick the clubhouse right across the street, across our lane from 2 of our houses out there. I'd prefer to see the clubhouse get moved to the south, closer to 112th and A, where there's access right off of A Street. But that would be out. It doesn't make sense in my opinion to have it right across the street from 2 houses. Aaron said he contacted and talked to neighbors. Everyone here has not talked to him, so we don't know who he talked to. We're really concerned about the test of the water and what's going to happen to it. So again, it's a great, until you hear back from the NRD or whoever's going to do something, I just respectfully ask that you tap the brakes on this thing and hold off on a final decision. I'll answer any questions if you want.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much. Is there any additional neutral testimony? And if not, we'll move to any testimony in opposition.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wingrove. I live at 1151 South 112th Street. And I don't know if this shows, does this work?
It just takes a second, yeah.
Yeah. Because I am concerned, for one, like, I don't feel like they have done their due diligence on the water and looking at the aquifers and the wells. I've been out in the neighborhood since 2007. This is my property. The golf course runs along my west and south property line. I am concerned with the convergence of, looks like I've got 2 greens and 2 tee boxes here. I understand that they're starting off with just owners, but they've also said that they're going to open it up for high school use for practice course. So that feels like a lot of golf balls in my yard that weren't there. Also, I think just respectfully, there wasn't any kind of neighborhood meeting. They have not reached out to us to have any kind of conversation about what was coming. I am concerned, and I'm not sure I felt like they've shared the distance from where things will happen and what their intent is to take down the line of trees here that we have through here and across our property here. I understand some of it certainly is on their property, but it certainly changes our landscape. And all of us that have been out there for all the years, this has been a very private residence area. There's 7 houses out there. And again, I don't feel like they've put the house that's down here on this road along that as well. I'm concerned out of the 290 acres that they are placing their parking area here and their clubhouse very close to our residential road. It feels like that could be accessed from a different point. And I understand that this is going to be progressed down the road, but we know that the parking lot's going to have lights on it. I am concerned with additional traffic that may come up our road as well for people that may, just people get lost in the country and what's going to happen to our road or what people might do out there as more people are brought into the area. So it's not that I'm against the course. I do support Dave's idea that we could just pump the brakes a little bit and then look and have more conversation about what is going to happen with our water and where they are respectfully placing their clubhouse and additions and changing the landscape out there. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Additional testimony in opposition. All right, is that it for testimony at this point? Okay, thank you.
You want to close it? Okay. I move to close the public hearing.
Second, Edens.
Ball,
Yes.
Oh, did you want to
Cruz?
ask any questions of staff?
Oh, God, no, sorry, we have to do, staff questions don't vote yes on that motion. I apologize. I have
rescind
questions.
the motion.
I have questions too. I was thinking we were asking during, I don't know.
No
I
worries.
apologize. Okay,
No worries.
staff questions. Mr. Wesselhoff, thank you for coming back up.
I'm wondering, I realize the applicant didn't ask for annexation. Do you know the reason for that? Is there potential for this to be annexed in the future? And what impact could that have, if any, on the water issue?
Well, so they didn't ask, they're not required to. You could have a special permit either in the 3 mile or the city limits in AG zoning for this type of use. If there would be a request for city water and sewer, then it is a requirement, or it goes hand in hand with that there's annexation. But they're not requesting that at this time, only the special permit, which is allowable under the ordinance.
And then my additional question is, in the staff report, it identifies this site as future urban residential on the 2050 future land use plan. So this is obviously a different use. It would not presumably ever become residential, but it could have been had this not become a golf course, correct?
Correct. An alternate proposal could have been for annexation and extension of city services with like an R3 CUP, for example, yes.
Additional questions? Anybody else? Because I had some, but I just want to make sure if everybody, okay. Just a question about, again, about the water, now that we've heard some additional testimony in terms of making sure an aquifer test is something that could be added potentially as a condition of approval?
Yes, so it could be required. The health department did not identify any concerns, but it could be required using that general advice from the NRD.
Okay. And in terms of the layout and the design and the access versus A Street or 112th Street, was there any conversation with traffic safety around access?
So,
Again, asking a question that was brought up by.
yeah, so one of the conditions of approval, LTU did look at this from that standpoint, and one of the conditions of approval had to do with a deviation request for driveways on A Street, South 98th, and 112th Street as far as the spacing, but they're not they're not proposing to subdivide or trigger a requirement that would necessitate paving or other improvements. So yes, they'll have to comply with the requirements for driveways per LTU.
All right. Any additional? Yeah.
Regarding still that clubhouse, because they mentioned, this is going to be in phases and it's a long-term thing. George, just curious on planning, do they have to come back with more details before they build the clubhouse?
Only if they would be proposing to change something from what's approved today. I think there's some notes on a condition that refers to accessory buildings as one of the elements that they may be constructed, but don't have to be shown on the site plan. So once this is approved today, or if it would be approved today, they would not need to come back unless they're proposing something substantially different from what was requested.
Okay. I was just curious because if they're allowing people to stay overnight, and if they ever did want to have a restaurant and bar open to public, that also wouldn't have to come to planning for approval?
That would potentially be a different use that would, depending on the scope, I might let Steve speak to that.
Okay.
Steve Hendrickson of the Planning Department. So lodging rooms that are accessory to the clubhouse and the golf course are part of the approval.
Okay.
So they're allowed to have some additional rooms where people could stay.
Okay.
I think the one thing I didn't realize was a thing before this came in, is that there are golf course memberships that are national memberships versus local. So there are organizations that have courses in multiple states, and you join their membership, and you can play the courses in multiple states. So the traffic generation is much less because you're not relying on people who are going there multiple times, 3 or 4 times a week. It could be something where it's less frequent, and so their tee times are further apart, and they provide lodging on site, which normally you wouldn't see with like a Wilderness Ridge golf course, because people are coming here because it's a national membership versus a local membership model. So that was the difference in the traffic generation. If they proposed a freestanding hotel, as George noted, yes, that would be something that would be different. I'd also just note our review is, as was noted in the comp plan, this is shown as urban residential. So had a developer come forward and proposed urban residential over the whole area, We would have had a plan that would show multiple access points on A Street, probably 1 or 2 on 112th. There'd be something on 98th. And you would have houses built, because it is shown as urban residential, with 20-foot rear yard setbacks. We would probably stub roads to the properties to the north in case they ever redeveloped. So we're trying to judge the impact of this, comparing a golf course to what is shown in the comprehensive plan currently, which is urban residential, because we have water, sewer in the area, which would have had an impact on the adjacent owners in terms of them being next to quiet and grass and things as well. So that's partly what we're looking at in terms of the comparison. There was a question about annexation. This area will be annexed at some point, including the acreage lots. That really relies on us having water mains and sewer lines in the area. A lot of those services are coming actually from the north. We have had people talk about development out in this area, so whether that's 5 years, 10 years, somewhere down the road, yes, it would be annexed, including this golf course, but even after annexation, connecting to the city water is not a requirement. If you come within 300 feet of a sanitary sewer, you're required to connect to it, but you're not required to connect to city water. And I would say, I'm not a golf course expert, but I think probably quite a few of our golf courses in town are not connected to city water to irrigate their courses. It is just far too expensive, because our fee structure for the water is the more you consume over certain amounts, your fee would increase, because that's a challenge to us to have very large water users on our water system. And so just often because of the cost, golf courses, private golf courses, are often just using still wells, even though they might have their clubhouse hooked up to city water.
Okay, additional questions? Yeah.
Nope, go.
I just have one more clarifying question, George, and if you could show it on the map potentially, just for everyone watching and listening. We had talked about in the conditions that the property owners' houses, they're fine with the setback being a little closer, but then the setbacks that are near the dwellings on the north and the east of this property, those setbacks are a little larger? Is that, just clarify that for everybody, especially that one lady who came and was concerned about having 2 corners of her lot next to holes and tees.
Right, so maybe to back up, so all the regular or normal AG setbacks will be met. There's no waivers requested. The additional setback in the conditions that pertain to the greens and the tee boxes had to do with keeping those golf course elements, not buildings, but those elements of the golf course out of the 60-foot side yard and the other setbacks, the front yard, the rear yard. The modification to that additional condition only applies to the developers' associated residential lots here. So the other proximity in terms of the homes, they would, not only the buildings and parking, but the golf course elements would have to comply with the setbacks.
Okay, so if my property line's here, I'm assured that a tee box and a other greenhouse hole would be 60 feet
60
feet away.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everybody understood that.
And are there additional screening requirements in that 60-foot? I can't remember when I read that.
I'm not aware of additional screening for AG usage. I would clarify that there is, one of the conditions pertains to the 60-foot side setback and adjusting that location to allow for the future improvement of Outlot A to 60 feet. So there's this Outlot A, if that's on the south side of the CUP homes to the north, if that would be upgraded in the future to account for that 60-foot residential width for right-of-way or street, and then in addition to that, there'd be the 60-foot setback.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that explains that.
Yeah, because one of the questions we had earlier when we were looking at the map that Olson provided, and now I'm looking at it on Google Earth, and there is a pretty substantial tree line on the south side of the street that we didn't see before, and it looks like on this map, the proposed parking lot would result in the elimination of those trees, because it's inside of the, yeah.
But did this memo change that, so it's moved out of that?
Yes, they're gonna have to move the parking outside of the setback area.
That's just was making sure that I was
Making sure we're all clear.
all clear.
Yep.
All right, additional questions?
Nope.
All right, applicant rebuttal.
Thank you. I might just clarify a couple items there and maybe provide a little bit of context there. I didn't intend to try to mislead anybody, said that I had specifically contacted neighbors. I had been contacted by neighbors after the application came in. And so Ward, I don't know if it's Grison or Greason, Bayer, Bangert, who's on the south side or the east side of 112th Street, and also Giannis, south of A Street, all had email conversations or phone communication with them. So I did not specifically reach out to any neighbors. Apologize if that was misleading in any way, but that wasn't the intent. Just another little bit of context. Sorry, I'm gonna have to zoom that out again. Right. So related to, just following up on the wells, the irrigation wells that we are submitting our preliminary permit applications for are going to be located on the west side of the project. That's where our irrigation pump house and our irrigation reservoir are. So these would be the more higher capacity wells that would be feeding into the irrigation system. So I just wanted to provide that in terms of kind of a spatial understanding how that relates to everyone else's current domestic groundwater wells that they may have.
Sorry, just really quick. So those are the irrigation wells, and then the clubhouse well would obviously not be, or maintenance
Correct.
facility.
Yep.
So there would be,
yeah. At this time, we're not submitting the permit for the clubhouse well, just because we're not proceeding with it. But yes, eventually we are, as well as the maintenance facility down there. And then I might just go back. I know, I did want to share. So this site plan, I know we're kind of looking at a couple different things. So this site plan, just for reference, with the conditions of approval that we had for moving the T's and greens, this one had been updated. And so you're kind of seeing that setback, and then had pulled all the T's and greens out of there. And I think from ownership standpoint and golf course designer standpoint, I think their intent is to certainly protect as many of those trees as possible, including along that A Street or the Outlot A corridor as well. So I just wanted to provide some clarity on that, and if there's any other questions for me related to that, happy to answer anything.
It's been brought up several times about maybe taking a little bit of a break, like 2 weeks, where you have a chance to have a neighborhood meeting. Would that be something that your client would entertain, or the applicant?
I mean, we could. I don't know. I mean, I think we're prepared to, kind of put the special permit to vote from our perspective. I mean, it seems like it is, can be a permitted use consistent with the zoning standards. There still is the backstop of the NRD well permit that we're subject to receiving that well permit before any, any actual course irrigation or anything else can begin. And so I think that's kind of where we're permitted, or kind of focused our energies on, is that next step. I mean, I could open that up to Alex Essay here as an owner's representative. I could ask that question of him, whether or not that would be something he'd be willing to entertain, but.
Yeah, I would agree with Aaron here.
sorry, name, address.
Alex Essay, 7110 Southampton Road. I agree with Aaron. I think we're ready to put this to vote, but I mean, personally, I know it's a priority of the owner to make sure there's as little, if any, impact at all to neighbors. So if they'd want to meet following this, I'd personally be happy to meet with anyone, hear their concerns, and address anything we can outside of this arena.
Thank you.
Additional questions for the applicant? Okay.
And now, I'd like to move to close the public hearing.
Second, Edens.
Okay, Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the special permit 25001 with the amendment changes proposed to us in the AM of February 5th.
Second, Edens.
All right, discussion. Go ahead.
Think of golf courses. I'd be happy to have a golf course as my neighbor. I'm going to put that out there. Instead of a 260 unit apartment or whatever we end up with. But I'm frustrated that they just didn't reach out to the neighbors. How much of this could have been prevented with a simple door knock and a simple, hey, this is what we want to do. What concerns do you have? I trust NRD to do the water feasibility and that they're going to be on top of the well and that they're going to do due diligence to make sure there's enough water to maintain those wells. But it's just frustrating that a lot of the things we had and the questions we had could have been handled before it hit this body by a simple neighborhood meeting. And so I want to put that out there again and again and again. Meet with the people that butt up to the land. So even if you do it after this meeting, I think those neighbors would greatly appreciate knowing who's putting it in and what it's going to look like, how their lives are going to change because of this golf course, and how many balls are actually going to hit their house.
Yeah, I guess I'll echo that, Gloria. I mean, I will support this. My biggest concerns was water for sure. That's a lot of watering, and concern for safety. I know we had a couple community members send in notes about golf courses hitting grandchildren playing in the yard, things like that. I mean, of course, those are really, really important concerns. So. Speaking with neighbors is a huge, important thing. I'm glad we got clarification on setbacks and the phases and the water. I agree with you. I really am glad NRD and the 20-year feasibility study and the well permits will make sure that testing happens and make sure the water stays safe for those who are using it, especially with drinking water. And then I had one more thing. I just wanted to provide clarification on the fact that someone mentioned this is a final action. So any final action items that happen today can be appealed. So please talk with any of the planning department if you do want to appeal whatever decision is made today.
So in light of the discussion, and I'm wondering about, I understand the NRD is talking about, the study also discussed an aquifer test, even though the health department didn't identify any concerns. That is something that we could, as a body, consider adding as an additional condition on this before we vote on the final motion. So I would be interested in, having people consider that, if that is an ongoing concern.
I was wondering about that too, but then I was like, well, if they have to get a well permit anyway, I feel like that's going to happen anyway. So I wasn't sure either. I mean, I wrote down that potential too.
I did
Happy
too.
but I think with the well permit, I think that's going to happen anyway, but.
I agree. It feels duplicative, I suppose, to add it as a requirement if they're going to already have to go through that with NRD.
And I would agree with my fellow commissioners that as a part of the process, it is a requirement.
Okay.
I have one more comment. Because there is a 14-day appeal, I will once again say you got a couple days to meet with those neighbors, just as a reminder, and you might avoid some appeals down the road. Maybe not.
Any other discussion? All right. Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may do so.
I move to adjourn.
Second, Edens.
All right, Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
We are adjourned.